So here we are, Dave, at the historic spot where the four allegedly arrived at 7:20 in the morning of July the 7th. Now, do you reckon any of those were really here?
No, well, there's no conclusive evidence of that. The picture we've been shown would never be accepted by a judge in a court of law as identification of the four, simply because you can't see their faces on there.
Yeah.
And of course there would be corroboration if that was a genuine picture, because there's a camera just the other side of that door, which would then photograph all four of them as they came through, at least inside profile, and we don't have that. And again, I can say from being a counter-terrorist officer that in evidential cases, a policeman goes there and swears under oath that any picture taken off a CCTV tape is a true representation of that tape.
Yeah.
Now, in the absence of that sworn statement, that picture is not evidence, basically.
Yeah, I mean, in my book, I took the view that all four had probably been photoshopped in. All four look really suspicious, especially this bar here going through Khan. You got this bar going through his head, okay, and that bar going through his waist. Now, I'll just get down so you can see where Khan's head would be. It goes right through his face like that, okay? In the famous picture you've all seen. You see, Tanweer and Hasib Hussain really did hire a car, and they probably did come down to London on that day. Tanweer hired his little Nissan Micra on the 1st of July. He had it for that week, right? Buzzing all around Leeds that week in his car. And Hasib Hussain really did tell his parents that he was going up to London on the afternoon before, so afternoon of July the 6th. He told them that he loved the big eye, all the sort of big sights of London. It gives him a big thrill. He's going up with his friend. Probably, maybe the morning of July 7th, or else the evening before, one of those. So those two really did go. Did they come here? Did they meet Lindsay from Aylesbury? I don't think so.
Well, one of the observations I've made is that the pictures taken from the so-called practice run on the 28th of June before of 7/7 are much clearer.
Totally.
And much more easy to identify.
And they got proper timestamps and date stamps on them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the real thing. And as you say, three of them, not four, really did come up to London on the 28th, and they had good time. I mean, we've been shown pictures of the fiendish terrorist Sid Khan on the 28th of June in front of Madame Tussauds eating an ice cream. Well, what more proof do you want?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But that whole idea of them being in London has been shored up by those 28th of June pictures. I mean, sometimes even me, a trained observer, I'll see those in the papers and think, oh my God, we're all wrong. And so I think, oh no, of course, it's the practice run again, yeah.
Notice the first anniversary of July the 7th, when the rolling news broadcasts were telling everybody how to be frightened of terrorists. The pictures they kept showing, minus the timestamps, were those 28th of June CCTV images.
Yeah, and we've seen something very similar with 9/11, where the one CCTV we saw was of these so-called hijackers getting on a feeder flight. It wasn't from actually the airports where the planes are supposed to have taken off, basically.
Yeah.
And again, when they talk about CCTV and the fact we've got so much of it in London, they always say it's there to protect us. But it seems to be whenever anything does go wrong, the CCTV is never there.
Yeah, there was absolutely nothing they could show for the first 2 years, any CCTV, any credible witness whatsoever in London. It's only 3 years later, the so-called July 7th trial at Kingston, they produced these very dodgy-looking pictures of Tanweer and the three of them, four of them here, apparently moving towards that entry door. 3 years late, well, I'm afraid that's a bit too late for us to believe them. A few weeks after July the 7th, I came up here, we interviewed passengers, and we discovered we got the official database of the trains that morning that there had been no 7:40 train, and all the trains had been cancelled by, just delayed by 20 minutes due to overhead power line troubles, and that was the real crack in the government story. The perfect crime had been devised. 52 people killed, hundreds of Londoners injured, and that cancellation of the key train was the flaw in their perfect crime.
It's quite funny, isn't it? Underinvestment in the transport infrastructure kind of saves civilization.
Well, yeah. Anyway, a whole year after 7/7, they bring up the official report, and guess what? The official report still has the 7:40 train.
Now, there's some dispute about that, wasn't there? Because what happened was that then came out in The Guardian, and the government said we got it off the police, but the police denied that. They said they were never responsible for saying it was a 7:40 train. And again, this feeds into the idea that there was some kind of script that's just devised somewhere in government or the intelligence service, is that everybody else accepts uncritically and without any evidence to back it up.
Well, a year after, John Reid tells the House of Commons, oh, no, there wasn't a 7:40 train, they must have got the 7:25. Oh, yeah? Well, on the Kingston trial, they released a picture of one of them coming out of the station at 7:15, and then the four of them are seen coming in at 7:21. Now, somebody's got their times badly wrong here. That they can't go out. Lindsay comes out, goes to the car park, gets his fatal rucksack with all the suicide bomb equipment in, gives the lads the tickets, explains that all the train times are up the creek, and then comes back here in 6 minutes. Do me a favour. The time's quite impossible.
Yeah, it would be pretty difficult if they were photographed, because it's actually 7:21 and 54 seconds, so it's virtually 7:22. Even getting up there and getting on a train in that time would be very, very difficult, even allowing for the fact that train actually leaves at 7:25.
I note that Andy Heyman, head of the Counter-Terror Command, came out with his book about of the 7/7 story, which is the nearest we'll ever get to a government story, okay? And in that book, which came out last year, 4 years after the event, he still has the 7:40 train running. Those lads still get the 7:40, and the CCTV on the train records them. 7:40, that's part of the original story, don't forget. And Andy Heyman still has that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very curious. It could be him trying to call to us for help. I mean, one of my interpretations of that Home Office narrative is it is so deeply flawed, it's almost like people behind the scenes saying, look, we know there's something going on here, we know it's an inside job, our hands are tied in government, but please, we're letting you know that, basically.
I get just the same impression from this fake Photoshop picture of the four here. It's not just a Photoshop forgery, it is such a bad Photoshop forgery. Whole lot of incredible errors and botched up with bits of bodies patched together, you know, and the foot and the impossible angle. Yeah. It's done so badly, it's like someone saying, hey, look, I don't like doing this, but anyone with half a brain can see that Khan wasn't there. I'll tell you what the Khan picture, right? Khan is the one, the railing goes through his head. It reminds me of the announcement that Khan's remains are found at 3 different locations in London, at Aldgate, at Tavistock Square, and isn't it Piccadilly?
Yeah.
Those 3 locations, they all find the remains of Sid Khan. Well, I think that's the way of the perps. The perps telling us, look, we don't like having to do this, but we've got to do it. And for anyone with half a brain, this is our message that Khan actually wasn't there that morning.
It's almost like they take satisfaction in kind of, in a sense, getting away with them. That's the whole thing I thought about the picture taken outside Luton at 7:21. Yeah. It's almost like them saying, look, we're going to give you this completely cockeyed picture that's really obviously photoshopped. We're going to put it on national press, and no one in the national press is going to mention that. Because that's how powerful we are.
Absolutely. Yeah,
you know, it's a bit like the death of Dr. Kelly. It's kind of like, well, okay, they can do these things. You expect the intelligence services to bump off dissidents they don't like. But the fact that mainstream media doesn't even speculate that he might have been murdered at all at the time is there almost like their assertion of power, saying, look, we control the media so keenly that nobody even dares speculate about this.
Yeah. Okay, let's come back to whether Khan was here at all. Mohammed Sadiq Khan, who was a major luminary, celeb and action hero in the Beeston area, looked after school, helped school kids, helped little girls getting to school on time. He'd been to the House of Commons, his family had been to the Buckingham Palace. He was a rising star, you know. Now, his wife had him drive her to the hospital where she was expecting a child on the Tuesday, 2 days before, right? 5th of July, she's taken to hospital in that little Nissan Micra, okay? The real Nissan Micra. And then, that is the last time she ever sees him. She is frantically trying to call her husband. Where is he? He's got this beautiful young wife just expecting their second child, and what happens to him? Now, she's under acute and terrible stress, and on the morning of 7/7, she has a miscarriage. This is Frida Patel, and what happens to her? She has a miscarriage, and I think that's a very poignant that he just wasn't around. He couldn't have just gone off the morning and left his wife to have a miscarriage and not having visited her. That's just not on the cards, and she said she never came across anything remotely suggesting he might be terrorist. Everyone remembers him, remembers his gentleness and his commitment to non-violence. So I think I don't accept actually that you've got any evidence of Khan being on this July 7th journey.
Yeah, no, I mean, something very weird happens that day. Obviously, they have a certain narrative, a certain plan, and obviously those things don't happen. It's a bit like 9/11. Once people start to awaken to these things, they're constantly firefighting to try and stop this stuff coming out that is so patently obvious, i.e. the lack of CCTV images, the lack of witness reports and so on. But clearly something does go wrong that day, but I don't think any of those 4 guys get to London or even get to Luton. I actually think there's something going wrong before that even.